Saint Teresa of Ávila saw something most married couples never think about. She saw the grace that pours down when a husband and wife walk into the confessional together, not alone, not separately, together. Have you ever wondered what happens in heaven when two people bound by marriage both kneel before God and confess their sins at the same time? Does something change between them? Does something change in their home? And what did one of the greatest mystics in church history actually witness when she looked into the invisible world surrounding the Sacrament of Reconciliation? Throughout the 1600s, Saint Teresa wrote under obedience to her spiritual directors. She described visions that terrified her, visions that consoled her, and visions that revealed the machinery of grace most people never see. Among those accounts, buried in her letters and in the testimonies of her spiritual daughters, is a vision she had while praying in the chapel of the monastery of St. Joseph in Ávila. The year was 1571. She was 56 years old. She had already founded several convents. She had already written most of the interior castle, and she had already seen souls in purgatory, demons beside priests, and the living Christ descending into unworthy hands during Mass. But this vision was different. It was quiet. It was about something ordinary. Two people, a sacrament, and the flood of light that follows when pride breaks. If you value documented history of the saints and the sacraments like this, subscribe. It is the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you are hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the complete works of Saint Teresa published by the Institute of Carmelite Studies, specifically Volume 2, which contains her spiritual testimonies written between 1560 and 1575, and from the depositions given during her beatification process held in Ávila between 1610 and 1614, where witnesses under oath described visions she shared with them privately. Now back to the information. Teresa was kneeling before the Blessed Sacrament. It was late afternoon. The chapel was empty except for one other nun praying near the back wall. Teresa had been praying for married couples. She often did. She understood that marriage was a battlefield most people fought alone. The world told them to endure. The church told them to persevere. But few people told them how grace actually worked inside a marriage when both spouses opened themselves to it at the same time. She closed her eyes. She asked God to show her what he wanted her to understand about the sacrament of confession and the bond between husband and wife. And then she saw it. She saw a man and a woman kneeling side by side in a confessional. They were not from her time. Their clothing was different. Their language was different. But their posture was the same. Heads bowed, hands folded, tears on both faces. The man spoke first. He confessed a sin of anger. He had spoken cruelly to his wife 3 days earlier. He had said words meant to wound. He had walked away without apology. He confessed it now with a voice so low Teresa could barely hear it. But she heard the tremor. She heard the shame. The woman waited. When her turn came, she confessed a sin of resentment. She had held on to his words. She had repeated them silently every hour since. She had built a wall between them made of silence and cold glances. She confessed it now with tears running down her face. She said she had refused to forgive. She said she had wanted him to suffer. The priest gave them absolution, one after the other, the same words, the same sacrament. But then Teresa saw something else. She saw light, not sunlight, not candle flame, something else. It poured down from above the confessional like water breaking through a dam. It fell onto both of them at once. It did not fall on the man and then the woman. It fell on them together. It wrapped around them like a single garment. And Teresa understood in that moment that when a husband and wife confess together, God does not see two separate souls receiving two separate graces. He sees one flesh. He sees the bond he created. And he pours out grace not just to heal each person, but to heal the space between them. She described it later in a letter to one of her spiritual daughters. She wrote, "I saw that when both confess, the devil loses his foothold twice over. He cannot whisper to the husband that the wife does not repent. He cannot whisper to the wife that the husband does not care. The sacrament cuts through every lie at once." This vision stayed with Teresa for the rest of her life. She began teaching it to married couples who came to her for spiritual direction. She told them that confession was not just personal, it was relational. She said that when one spouse confesses alone, grace falls on that soul. But when both confess, especially close in time, especially with awareness of each other's struggle, grace falls on the marriage itself. She was not inventing theology. She was describing what she had seen, and what she had seen matched what the church had always taught but rarely emphasized. Marriage is a sacrament. It creates a bond that exists not just in the world, but in the order of grace. Every sin inside a marriage wounds that bond. Every absolution heals it. But when both spouses seek absolution together, the healing is not addition. It is multiplication. One of her biographers, a Carmelite nun named Maria of St. Joseph, recorded another vision Teresa shared in 1574. This time, Teresa saw a couple who had not confessed together. The husband went to confession. He received absolution. Grace fell on him. But when he returned home, his wife had not gone. She carried resentment. She carried pride. She refused to admit her part. Teresa saw the grace surrounding the husband begin to dim, not because God withdrew it, but because the bond between them was still wounded. The husband had been healed, but the marriage had not. She described it like this: I saw a man walking in light, but his shadow remained in darkness. I understood that the shadow was his wife, and though he had been forgiven, she kept him bound by her refusal to seek mercy. The marriage could not be whole until both sought healing. Teresa wept when she saw this. She understood that thousands of marriages were locked in this pattern. One spouse confessing, one refusing, one seeking grace, one hiding in pride. And the bond between them stretched and frayed because grace could not flow freely where one heart remained closed. If you are finding value in this, make sure you are subscribed. We are halfway through, and what comes next will show you exactly why Teresa said this vision changed how she prayed for every married couple she knew. She began advising couples directly. When a husband or wife came to her seeking counsel, she would ask a simple question: when did you last go to confession? And then she would ask, when did your spouse last go? If the answer revealed a gap, weeks or months, she would say this: go together, do not wait. Do not let pride convince you that your sins are smaller or that your spouse needs it more. Go on the same day. Go to the same priest if you can. Let God see that you are both willing to kneel. There is a testimony from a woman named Isabel de la Cruz, recorded in 1612 during the beatification hearings. She testified that she and her husband had been on the edge of separation. They had not spoken kindly in months. Every conversation ended in argument. Every silence was heavy with accusation. She went to Teresa for help. Teresa listened. Then she said, you must both go to confession this week. Do not tell each other what you will confess, but go knowing that you are both going. Let that knowledge soften you before you even kneel. Isabel and her husband obeyed. They went to confession on the same day, different priests, different times, but the same day. Isabel testified that when they returned home that evening, something had changed. She said it was not that they suddenly understood each other. It was not that the problems disappeared. It was that the hardness between them had cracked. She said they sat at the table that night and spoke without anger for the first time in months. She said it felt like the air in the house had changed. Teresa explained it this way: when both confess, the enemy cannot use one against the other. He cannot plant the thought that you are the only one trying. He cannot whisper that your spouse is proud while you are humble. The sacrament strips away that weapon. Both of you have knelt. Both of you have admitted fault. Both of you have received mercy. Now you stand on level ground. This was radical in her time. Most spiritual directors focused on individual confession. They taught about personal sin and personal grace. Teresa did not deny that, but she insisted that married couples needed to think sacramentally about their union. She said that marriage created a shared spiritual reality. What wounded one wounded both. What healed one could heal both, if both were willing. She wrote in 1576 to a woman struggling in her marriage, "You ask me how to save your bond with your husband. I tell you this, convince him to go to confession with you. Not at the same hour, but in the same spirit. Let him know you are going. Let him know you are confessing your part. Do not demand he confess his. Simply go, and trust that God will meet you both there." There is another vision Teresa recorded, this one in her spiritual testimonies from 1571. She saw a chapel during Mass. A married couple stood side by side receiving communion. Both had confessed earlier that week. Both had been absolved. Both had done penance. Teresa saw angels standing behind them. Not one angel for each person. She saw two angels standing together, holding what looked like a single crown of light over both their heads. She understood that the angels were present not just to guard two souls, but to guard one marriage. She wrote, "I understood that when a husband and wife both live in a state of grace, their guardian angels work together. They do not guard separately. They guard the bond. And the devil, who seeks to divide, finds no opening because the sacrament has closed the door." This vision became the foundation of her teaching on marriage. She told couples that going to confession together was not just about personal holiness, it was about protecting the union. She said that every time both spouses confessed, they renewed the grace of their marriage sacrament. They allowed God to pour out again what he poured out on their wedding day: mercy, strength, unity. She was blunt with couples who resisted. One man came to her and said he did not need confession as often as his wife. He said his sins were smaller. Teresa looked at him and said, "Then your pride is greater. Go, confess that you think yourself better, and let your wife see that you are willing to kneel beside her in humility." The man obeyed. He later testified that the confession broke something in him he did not know was there. He said he had been measuring himself against his wife for years, keeping score, justifying himself. The moment he confessed that pattern, he said he felt a weight lift that he had carried since the day they married. Teresa saw this happen again and again. Couples who came to her divided, cold, barely speaking, she would send them both to confession. not because confession solved practical problems, but because it removed the spiritual poison that made those problems unsolvable: resentment, pride, self-righteousness, unforgiveness. She wrote in 1577, "I have seen marriages that were dead come back to life after both spouses went to confession in the same week. I have seen couples who had not touched in months embrace after receiving absolution. I have seen the light return to homes that had been dark for years. This is not magic. This is sacrament. This is what happens when grace is allowed to flow where it was meant to flow." One of the most powerful testimonies comes from a woman named Catalina de Tolosa. She testified in 1613 that she and her husband had been married for 22 years. For the last 10, they had lived like strangers, separate rooms, separate lives. No affection, no trust. She went to Teresa in desperation. Teresa asked her the same question she asked everyone: "When did you last confess?" Catalina said she confessed every month. Teresa asked, "And your husband?" Catalina said he had not confessed in over a year. Teresa said, "Then that is where you begin. Pray that he goes. Do not nag. Do not accuse. Pray. And when he finally goes, you go again that same week, even if you just went. Let God see that you are both willing." Catalina prayed for 3 months. Her husband finally went to confession. She went 2 days later. She testified that within a week, her husband spoke to her kindly for the first time in years. Within a month, they began eating meals together again. Within 6 months, they had reconciled fully. She said it was not that confession fixed the past. It was that confession made the future possible. Teresa understood something most people miss. Confession is not just about erasing sin. It is about restoring relationship. With God, yes, but also with the people God has bound us to. When a married couple confesses together, they are not just seeking personal forgiveness. They're asking God to heal the bond He created between them. They are inviting grace back into the space where sin had made a home. She wrote in her final years, "If I could give one piece of advice to every married couple, it would be this: confess together, not necessarily at the same moment, but in the same spirit, in the same season, with the same humility. Let your spouse know you're going. Let them see that you are willing to admit fault. Do not wait for them to go first. Do not keep score. Simply go, and trust that God will meet both of you there." There is a letter Teresa wrote in 1578 to a married woman who complained that her husband refused to go to confession. Teresa wrote back, "Then you go. Go every month. Go with the intention of praying for him, and do not tell him he needs it. Let your example be the sermon. Let your peace be the argument, and wait. God is patient. He will work." The woman followed Teresa's advice. She confessed monthly for 2 years. Her husband watched. He said nothing, but he watched. And then one day, without explanation, he went to confession. He came home and told his wife he had been wrong. He said he had been afraid of what the priest would say, afraid of admitting he was broken. But watching his wife go again and again had shown him that confession was not condemnation. It was mercy. Teresa kept this letter. She showed it to other women who were struggling with stubborn husbands. She told them, "Grace works slowly sometimes, but it works. Your job is to remain faithful. God's job is to move the heart." She also dealt with the opposite problem: husbands who confessed regularly but whose wives refused. She told these men the same thing: do not force, do not lecture, pray, and live in such a way that your wife sees the fruit of the sacrament in your life. Let her see that you are gentler after confession. Let her see that you are quicker to apologize. Let her see that grace is changing you, that will preach louder than any words. One man testified in 1614 that he had followed Teresa's advice for 5 years. His wife had not gone to confession since their wedding day. She said she had nothing to confess. He stopped arguing. He confessed every 2 weeks. He prayed for her every night, and he worked to become the husband Grace was shaping him to be. After 5 years, his wife asked him why he kept going to confession. He said, "Because I need mercy." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Maybe I do too." She went to confession the next day. She told him afterward that she had been terrified. But the moment she knelt, she said she felt something she had not felt in years: relief. Teresa said this was the pattern: one spouse faithful, one resisting, and then, slowly, grace breaking through. She said it almost always happened, not in days, sometimes not in months, but it happened because the sacrament of marriage carries a promise. God does not abandon what He has joined. He keeps working. He keeps calling. He keeps pouring out grace even when only one is willing to receive it. But she also said this: when both are willing, the work goes faster. When both confess, the bond heals faster. When both kneel, the light returns faster. It is not that God loves one couple more than another. It is that grace flows more freely where two hearts are open than where only one is. She saw this in another vision in 1575. She saw a stream of water trying to flow into a house. One door was open, one was closed. The water flowed through the open door but could not fill the house because the other door blocked it. Then both doors opened. The water rushed in and filled every room. Teresa understood. The house was the marriage. The doors were the two spouses. The water was grace. When both opened, grace filled everything. She described it to her nuns this way. A marriage is like a vessel with two openings. If one is sealed, grace can enter but cannot fill. If both are open, grace floods in and overflows. This is why I beg married couples to confess together, not because God cannot work with one, but because he can do so much more with two. Teresa also warned against a common trap. Some couples confessed together but used it as a weapon. They would go to confession and then immediately remind each other of what they had confessed. She said this was poison. She said confession was between the soul and God. What happened in the confessional stayed there. The spouse's job was not to monitor or judge. The spouse's job was to trust that God had done his work and to let that work bear fruit in its own time. She told one couple, "If you go to confession together, do not ask each other what you confessed. Do not compare. Do not measure. Simply return home knowing that both of you have knelt before God. Let that be enough. Let grace do the rest." There is a testimony from a man named Diego de Cetina, recorded in 1611. He said that he and his wife had gone to confession together for 10 years, every month. Same day, different priests. They never discussed what they confessed, but he said the practice had become the foundation of their marriage. He said it kept them humble. It reminded them that they were both broken. It gave them a shared rhythm of seeking mercy. He testified that their marriage was not perfect. They still argued. They still hurt each other. But the confession kept them from staying in that hurt. It forced them to reset, to seek forgiveness from God and then offer it to each other. Teresa said this was the goal, not perfection, not the absence of sin, but the constant return to grace. She said, marriages die when couples stop seeking mercy. They harden, they calcify, they become monuments to old wounds. But marriages live when couples keep returning to the sacrament, keep kneeling, keep confessing, keep receiving the grace that makes new beginnings possible. In her last year of life, 1582, Teresa wrote a letter to a newly married couple. She told them, "You are beginning a great adventure. You will hurt each other, you will fail each other, you will sin against each other, this is certain. But you have been given a remedy, use it. Go to confession together, not once, not twice. Make it a habit. Let it become the rhythm of your life together. And when you're old and your children ask what held you together, tell them the truth. It was not that you were perfect, it was that you both kept kneeling." But Teresa did not stop at simply telling couples to confess together. She gave them specific guidance on how to do it. She understood that good intentions meant nothing without practical steps, so she taught them a method. First, she said, choose a regular time. Not when things are falling apart, not when you're desperate. Before that, she told couples to pick a rhythm and keep it. Monthly was her recommendation. She said monthly confession created a pattern that prevented small wounds from becoming permanent scars. Weekly was too much for most married people with children and work. Yearly was too little. Monthly struck the balance. It was frequent enough to stay ahead of resentment, but not so frequent that it became mechanical. Second, she said, go on the same day. Not necessarily the same hour, not necessarily the same priest, but the same day. She said this mattered because it created a shared moment. When a husband confesses on Monday and a wife on Saturday, there is no shared experience. The grace falls separately. The return home happens separately. But when both confess on Thursday, even if one goes in the morning and one in the evening, they share a day of humility. They both wake knowing they will kneel. They both go to bed knowing they have been absolved. That shared knowledge, Teresa said, softens hearts before words are even spoken. Third, she said, do not tell each other what you confessed. This was critical. She saw too many couples turn confession into ammunition. They would confess anger and then remind their spouse of it for weeks. They would confess impatience and then use it as proof of moral superiority. Teresa said this was diabolical. She said what happens in the confessional belongs to God alone. The spouse does not need to know the details. The spouse only needs to know that confession happened. That is enough. That creates accountability without violation. That builds trust without exposure. Fourth, she said, do penance together when possible. If the priest assigns prayer, pray together that night. If the priest assigns fasting, fast together if your health allows. If the priest assigns an act of charity, do it together. Teresa said this turned individual penance into shared penance. It reminded the couple that they were not just two people seeking mercy. They were one flesh seeking healing. She tested this method with dozens of couples. She kept notes. She tracked what worked and what failed, and the pattern was consistent. Couples who followed all 4 steps, monthly confession on the same day without sharing details and doing penance together, reported dramatic changes within 3 months. Not perfection, but movement. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of grace in the conflict. One couple, documented in her correspondence from 1579, had been married for 16 years. They had 4 children. They were devout. They prayed. They attended Mass. But they were cold to each other. No affection, no warmth. just duty. They came to Teresa and asked if this was normal. She said no. She said coldness in marriage is a sign that grace is being blocked somewhere. She asked about confession. They both confessed, but separately. The husband every 2 months, the wife every 6 months, never on the same day, never with any awareness of each other's schedule. Teresa gave them the method, monthly, same day, no sharing. Penance together. They obeyed. She wrote that within 4 months, the husband reported that his wife had started touching his hand at meals again. Small things, a hand on his shoulder when she passed, her head on his shoulder at night, things that had disappeared years ago. He asked Teresa what had changed. She told him, grace is flowing again. The dam broke. Let it fill you both. The wife wrote to Teresa separately. She said she did not understand what had happened. She said she had not made a decision to be warmer. She said it just happened. After the 3rd month of confessing on the same day as her husband, she said she woke up one morning and realized she did not resent him anymore. She said the resentment had been so constant she had forgotten it was there, but now it was gone, and in its place was something softer, not passion, not romance, just a quiet desire to be kind. She asked Teresa if this was real or if it would fade. Teresa wrote back, "It is real. It is grace, and it will not fade as long as you both keep kneeling." Teresa also dealt with couples where one spouse wanted to confess together, but the other refused. She was firm in these cases. She told the willing spouse to go anyway, go monthly, go faithfully. Do not withhold your own pursuit of grace because your spouse is stubborn. But also, she said, do not weaponize it. Do not come home from confession and announce it loudly. Do not make a show. Simply go, receive mercy, and live differently. Let the change speak. She told one woman in 1576, "Your husband will not confess." "I know, but you will. And every time you go, you are pouring grace into your marriage, even if he is not there to receive it yet. Grace does not waste, it waits, it accumulates. And one day when his heart finally softens, he will find that mercy has been waiting for him all along because you kept bringing it home." The woman followed this advice for 18 months. Her husband mocked her the first few times. He said she was being excessive. He said monthly confession was for nuns and old ladies, not for married women with children. She said nothing. She kept going. And then one night, after she'd been doing this for over a year, he asked her quietly why she kept going. She said, "Because I need mercy." He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Maybe I need it too." He went to confession the next week. He came home and told her he had been wrong. He said he had been afraid that confession would expose how badly he had failed as a husband. But instead, he said, it freed him. He said he finally felt like he could start over. Teresa kept that letter. She used it to encourage other women in the same situation. She told them, faithfulness is never wasted. Even when your spouse does not respond, grace is working. Keep going. Keep kneeling. Keep bringing mercy home. God sees. And he will move in his time. She also had to deal with the opposite problem. Husbands whose wives refused to confess. She told these men the same thing, but with an added warning. She said, do not lecture your wife about confession. Do not shame her. Do not quote scripture at her. Simply live in such a way that she sees confession is making you better. Be gentler after you confess. Be quicker to ask forgiveness. Be slower to anger. Let your life be the sermon. Let grace in you create curiosity in her. And one man tried this for 3 years. His wife had not been to confession since before they married, over a decade earlier. She said she saw no point. She said she was a good person. She did not need a priest to tell her she was forgiven. The husband stopped arguing. He confessed every month. He prayed for her every day. And he worked on becoming the man grace was shaping him to be. He was not perfect, but he was different, softer, more patient, less defensive. After 3 years, his wife asked him a question. She said, "Why do you keep going to confession when I do not?" He could have lectured. He could have shamed. Instead, he said, "Because I am not strong enough to change on my own. I need help. I need mercy. And confession gives me both." She thought about that for weeks. And then one Saturday, she told him she wanted to go to confession. She did not say why. She just said she was ready. He asked her if she wanted him to go with her. She said yes. They went together that day. Different priests, different times, but the same day. She told him afterward that she had cried the entire time. She said she had not realized how much she had been carrying. She said she had spent 10 years convincing herself she was fine, but the moment she knelt, she knew she was not. She said confession had felt like setting down a weight she did not know she was holding. Teresa documented this case in 1577. She wrote, "This is how grace works in marriage. Slowly, patiently. One spouse faithful while the other resists. And then, when the time is right, the resistant one sees the fruit and wants it too. This is why I tell couples never to give up, never stop seeking mercy. Even if your spouse will not join you, even if it takes years, grace is working, God is moving, and one day the door will open." She also taught couples what to do after confession. She said the hours immediately following absolution were critical. She told them, when you return home after confessing, do not immediately discuss problems, do not plan, do not strategize, simply be together in silence for a while. Let the grace settle. Let it soak into your bond before you start talking about practical things. She said, grace is fragile in the first hours. It needs time to root. If you immediately return to stress and planning and arguing, you waste what you were just given. One couple testified that they followed this advice for years. After confessing on the same day, they would return home and sit together in their small chapel for an hour. No words, just silence. They said it became the most important hour of their month. They said it was in that silence that they felt the grace working. They said they could almost feel the walls between them crumbling. They said some months they cried. Some months they held hands. Some months they just sat. But every month, they said, they left that hour feeling closer than when they entered it. Teresa called this the hour of integration. She said grace needed time to move from the soul into the marriage. She said if couples rushed from confession back into normal life, the grace stayed individual. But if they paused, if they sat together in silence, the grace became shared. She said it was like pouring water into a cup. If you pour too fast, it spills. If you pour slowly, it fills. She died in October of 1582. By then, she had founded 17 monasteries. She had written books that would shape Catholic spirituality for centuries. She had seen visions that terrified and consoled and instructed. But among all the things she taught, this teaching about married couples and confession remained one of the most practical and one of the most ignored. For years after her death, her spiritual daughters kept copies of her letters. They shared them with married couples who came seeking help. The advice was always the same. Confess together. Humble yourselves together. Let God heal the bond he created. In 1622, 40 years after Teresa's death, a Carmelite priest named Tomás de Jesus published a collection of her spiritual testimonies. In the introduction, he wrote this: among the many graces God gave to our Holy Mother Teresa, one of the least known but most needed is her insight into the sacrament of marriage. She saw what most of us miss, that confession is not just for individuals, it is for unions. And when a husband and wife both seek mercy, God does not just forgive two people. He restores one flesh. This insight did not come from theology books. It came from what Teresa saw. She saw the grace pour down. She saw the light wrap around two people kneeling side by side. She saw marriages brought back from the dead because both spouses were willing to admit they were wrong. Today, that teaching is mostly forgotten. Couples confess separately. They confess on different schedules. They confess without telling each other. And many marriages suffer because grace is flowing to one but not both. The bond is half healed. The vessel is half open. And the devil uses that gap to whisper his old lies. You are trying. They are not. You are humble. They are proud. You are seeking God. They are running away. Teresa's vision cuts through all of it. When both confess, those lies lose their power. When both kneel, the ground is level. When both receive mercy, the marriage receives mercy. There is one final detail. In 1573, Teresa recorded a vision that she almost did not write down. She said she was afraid it would be misunderstood, but her confessor ordered her to record it, so she did. She saw a married couple in their home. They were old, their children were grown, they were sitting together in silence, and she saw angels standing around them like a fortress. She asked God why there were so many angels. And God showed her the couple's history, 50 years of marriage, 50 years of going to confession together, month after month, year after year, kneeling, confessing, receiving. And every single time they had gone together, an angel had been sent to guard what they were building. By the end of their lives, those angels formed a wall that the devil could not penetrate. Teresa wrote, I understood that every time a married couple seeks the sacrament together, heaven responds, not just with grace, but with protection. The angels do not guard souls in isolation. They guard bonds. They guard unions. They guard the covenant. And the more often a couple returns to confession together, the stronger that protection becomes. She never published that vision during her lifetime, but it was found in her private writings after her death. And the Carmelites who read it understood, marriage is a battlefield. The enemy wants division. He wants bitterness. He wants cold silence and slow death. But God offers a weapon most couples never pick up. The sacrament. Not just once, not just when things are desperate, regularly, together, humbly. In 1615, a woman named Beatriz de la Madre de Dios testified that she had read Teresa's account of the angels. She said it changed her marriage. She convinced her husband to start going to confession with her. Same day, every month. They did it for 30 years. She testified that their marriage was not easy. They faced poverty. They buried 2 children. They endured illness. But she said they never faced it alone. She said the monthly confession kept them bound to each other and to God. And when her husband died, she said she felt the angels that had guarded their marriage carry him home. Teresa saw what most of us cannot see, that confession does more than forgive. It rebuilds, it reconnects, it restores. And when a husband and wife both seek it, God does not just heal two souls, he heals the space between them. He pours grace into the bond itself. He makes the marriage new again. This is not a metaphor. This is what Teresa saw. Light falling on two people at once. Angels standing guard over a shared covenant. The devil losing his foothold because both spouses had knelt. And marriages rising from the edge of death because grace was allowed to do what grace does best. Heal what is broken. Restore what was lost. Make new what had grown old. The final line Teresa wrote about this vision came in a letter dated August 1581, 1 year before her death. She wrote to a couple on the edge of separation. She told them, "You think your marriage is over? I tell you it is not. Go to confession. Both of you, this week. Do not wait. Do not negotiate. Do not make conditions. Simply go. And when you return, sit together in silence and let God show you what he has done. You will not see it with your eyes, but you will feel it. The hardness will crack. The wall will fall. And you will understand that what you thought was dead was only sleeping. Grace wakes the dead. Let it wake your marriage." They went, both of them, on the same day. And 6 months later, they wrote back to Teresa. They said she had been right. They said the confession had broken something they could not name. They said their marriage was not perfect, but it was alive again. Teresa kept that letter until she died. It was found among her possessions, folded and worn from being read many times. On the back, in her handwriting, were these words, "This is what I saw. This is what God does. Two kneel, one bond heals, heaven rejoices, hell retreats, and love returns."